So manage site settings are very crucial settings for the setup of your site. And as I mentioned a minute ago, when we do your onboarding application where you fill out the onboarding form and we're gathering your documentation, we're going to be asking some of those key questions that help us know how to set up your site. This is where we set up the site, and it is actually partitioned off into different sections. And so here in organization, of course, this is where we put your name. This is where we upload the logo. This is where we tell the system, are you a grant user or are you a scholarship user? Do not touch site behavior, because individual, that means you're a you're a scholarship user. Individual is for scholarships only. If I go to the grant site, you'll see when I log in here, it's organizations. If you change this button, that's why we say do not touch it. If you change this, your site will change from a scholarship to a grant. You will lose all your grant data. And vice versa, scholarships. If you change this to organizations, you're going to lose your scholarship functionality and it'll be a grant system. So do not touch that. That's what the system, that's how we tell the system how that is. And then general settings are some of the key ones. What type of currency do you use? What's your time zone? You can kind of see some of them here. You know, when someone comes to your site, what's the pages? Are they going to see a login page? Are they going to see the applications list? Are they going to see a search page? That's where you can see all of these settings are here. If for any reason you want to change your color scheme, this is the site theme. Click here. And then this is where we set that color scheme down here. This is just an example. This is not your site. This is just an example. You can see it's just these Latin terms, but this is just because it's for example purposes only, but this is where you can put in your hex values for your graphics and enter that information, and then that would make the changes on your screen here. That's where that theme comes from. That's where we set that color scheme on your site settings. Let me cancel. I'm just going to hit site settings here to go back. Okay, so you can kind of see some of those, all of these here. There is a user's guide that explains these in more detail, step by, of each one and what the functionality is, but you can just kind of see this is some of those key settings. A lot of times, here's a key one that we set up. Where's it at? The submittal one. Send email to application contact when an application is submitted. So anytime an application is submitted, this set right now is turned on. Whoever the application contact is, so when we build the application, the general information, we add the individual who's responsible for maintaining that application. That's the application contact. So you would get an email every time a student submits. That's some of the functionalities that you can see here. But again, there is a user guide that goes into more detail on each one of the site settings, and when they're turned off and on, what do they cause the system to do. Remember, site settings means entire site is affected. Anything you make a change on, it's going to affect every application of your site, not just one application, but the entire site. Referrals, if you are using that manage referrals, like I talked about, this is where we would activate those settings. Reviewer screen settings, your review process, there's certain settings that we'll set for you in regards to the review process. How do you want them to see the application form? Do you want them to be able to have their scores when they're viewing applicants over and over again, pushing scores? Do you want them to have a submit button? Different settings like that. How long do you want their auto save to be set at? That's for the review process only. When creating your funding sources, so here in the see if I can get this to scroll. This manage application funds. We have standard settings that you have to that you can complete when creating a fund setup, when setting up the fund. But maybe you want to capture some more information. And so here you can activate these fields. You have 20 different fields. You have some essay boxes, some date fields, some numeric, some text boxes, some drop downs. Maybe you want to create some additional items you want to capture in that fund. So when you create a new fund, maybe you want to activate some items to capture some more information. You can do so here. And then in the label, what do you call your fund? Some people call them scholarships. Some people call them grants. Some people call them fellowships. We call it funding. They'd be very generic. So when you see anywhere that has to do with funding, so this is manage application funds. Maybe you want it to be, when you get into that screen, you want it to say manage scholarships. This is where you would make that change so that it would be what you call your fund. And then if you are capturing donor information, you might want to enable this. This will allow you to capture the donor name of that fund and also the email address of that donor. And then who's the contact? That would be, that would show where you could enter a contact, just like the application contact, who's the admin internally that's responsible for maintaining this fund. You add a fund contact, and then that'll also show on that description page, it'll say please contact, and it'll have that information there as well.